Carol Kennedy was a 53-year-old divorcee. She was a mother of 2 children. She was an artist. She was an educator. She lives in a somewhat secluded area outside of town, a lot of open land.
I just loved Carol immediately. We were very good friends. She was an absolutely beautiful, pure, loving person.
July 2nd of 2008, Carol Kennedy was murdered in that house. This all starts that Carol Kennedy's on a phone call with her mother. Next thing you know, the mother hears her say, "Oh no." And all of a sudden, the call is disconnected.
Sheriff's Office, Maria, how can I help you?
Mother suspects something's not correct, and she calls 911.
I was on the phone with my daughter, and she screamed and said, "Oh no," and the phone's gone dead. Can you go check?
And next thing you know, the police arrive. Somebody looks through the window and sees a dead body on the floor, sees blood all over the place. The person who killed her was very upset with her. There's no reason to whack her 7, 8 times over the head with a club. It was a horrific crime scene.
We knew very little other than the fact that she had been clearly beaten to death.
It's horrible, just horrible. I mean, I just can't believe a person would be so cruel.
My name is Joseph Moira. I'm a private investigator. I was hired by 48 Hours to look into this case. This was a passion crime. This was clearly somebody who knew her, and therefore the suspects are very limited.
And to all a good night.
My brother Steve and Carol were together for about 30 years. They were just crazy in love for each other. Steve was a very successful financial advisor. He had just been promoted to the senior vice president at UBS. So he had a very strong position and a job that he loved.
I always had a sense they were both deeply in love with each other and that the marriage had become toxic.
Stephen DeMarca puts himself approximately a mile and a half from this exact location the night of the murder. He claims that he went for a bike ride. So obviously, being the ex-husband and putting himself in the area, he becomes a suspect immediately.
I want to be cooperative. Okay. And I'm hoping, like I said, I do my best to rule people out.
He's the only person that hated her. She was just too good. No one else could do that to her.
They already don't believe him. They didn't buy his initial story. They don't buy the alibi of riding a bicycle. They're saying, "Oh, we got our guy."
Steve couldn't do this to anyone. Certainly not to Carol, not to the mother of his children.
From the defense point of view, the biggest aspect of reasonable doubt in this case is the lack of physical evidence. There was none on his bike, there was none in his car, there was none in his house, there was none in his clothing. There should have been something.
As an American, you're entitled to you're innocent until proven guilty. Boy, we found out that that wasn't true.
If you decide that you're going to arrest Steve DeMarca for the murder of his wife without any physical evidence whatsoever, you better have a very strong circumstantial case.
They cannot put Steve inside that murder scene.
So there's nothing we're going to find that's going to tell you there, "Oh, no, I wasn't there. Okay, I wouldn't do that." Okay.
What we do know is the DNA under Carol Kennedy's left fingernails is a complete profile, and it's not Stephen DeMarca.
I'm Maureen Maher. Tonight on 48 Hours.
End of the trail.
I think it was really extremely shocking. You just don't expect something like that to happen here.
The murder of 53-year-old Carol Kennedy had a devastating impact on her friend and neighbor, Jan Wheeler.
I didn't know anything about it until the next morning, and there was the yellow tape across. So I stopped, and I said, "Hey, my good friend lives there. Is everything okay?" And they said, "No, it's not." And they said, "She's dead."
Carol had been a teacher and a therapist working with addicts at a local women's clinic, but she was mostly known around town as an artist, a printmaker.
Printmaking is a fine art form that brings the disciplines of drawing, painting, graphic arts all into one arena.
She spent hours in this studio working alongside fellow artists like Barb Wills.
To me, her artwork gave her her voice. Nobody was judging her, nobody was hurting her.
The bitterness of her divorce with Steve could be clearly seen in her work, according to another friend, Betsy Pettit.
And I think for her, it definitely showed, especially the colors. They were much darker, much moodier.
He was a fun-loving person. He wanted to have fun, and you wanted to be around him.
Steve is the oldest of 9 children.
He taught me how to canoe and swim and ride a bike, and he was just the best big brother you could ask for.
He's a very gentle, non-violent guy.
Which is why his family was so shocked when police claimed they had a strong circumstantial case and arrested him in October of 2008, 3 months after Carol's murder.
Carol Kennedy's body was discovered laying in a pool of her own blood.
At DeMocker's trial, the horror of the crime was hard for some to reconcile with a successful stockbroker sitting at the defense table.
When I met him, he was clearly in shock, clearly was trying to hold his family together.
Rich Robertson is an investigator for DeMocker's defense team. Robertson walked us through Carol's home.
So what do we know about Carol's activity that night? What was she doing?
Well, when Carol got off work, probably about 5:30 in the afternoon, she went to the store, bought some salad, came home, and went for a run.
Robertson saw the gruesome crime scene within days of the murder.
It was clearly a violent crime scene. Just the blood spatter on the wall, on the desk, it was just all over. I mean, it was all the way to the other wall.
How do you have this much blood and there's no bloody footprint, no bloody fingerprints or handprints anywhere?
Right.
I mean, it's like a ghost came in.
Right.
Defense lawyer Larry Hammond insists there was no record of any violence throughout the DeMocker's marriage.
Someone might say, well, a great theme here is that this was a very contentious divorce, which causes most of us to think, well, it must have been violent. There must have been threats. There must have been protective orders.
And was there any of that?
No.
Was there ever any
not at all.
threat
None.
of violence anywhere?
No.
I never saw him act violently. He was very controlled.
Even DeMocker's girlfriend at the time of the murder, Renee Girard, says that he often spoke fondly of his ex-wife.
He shared a lot about his marriage, and he shared it in many stories that were heartwarming and joyful, and as something he regretted losing.
But Carol's friend Jan says, in truth, Steve was angry about the divorce.
Oh, he was furious. He was absolutely furious that she would have the nerve to do anything against him because she never had.
But clearly, Carol had finally had enough. Enough of a husband who, by all accounts, had become a serial philanderer.
Towards the end, she was like, I think I've counted 17 affairs he's had. The first one that she was aware of was her midwife and he were sleeping together while she was pregnant.
And so why would she stay with him then?
She loved him. He's just very charming. He will tell a woman exactly what she wants to hear.
He could be a bad guy from a morality standpoint, if you will, but that doesn't reflect a motive to kill Carol.
Do you think you can make Stephen look like a likable guy to the jury?
What you may think about him as a good guy or a bad guy have nothing to do with this case.
Caught in the middle are the couple's 2 daughters who are called to testify. They have lost a mother, but believe in their father's innocence.
It was the first time the full family had been together in a while, and it was after the divorce had been finalized, and it was actually very pleasant.
Katie tells the court about the last time she saw her mother as the family gathered at the airport to see her off on a trip abroad 4 days before the murder.
It was very emotional. There was just nothing but expressions of love and gratitude and happiness. And I looked back and my dad had his arm around my mom and my mom had her arm around my sister, and they were all waving to me. So that was the last memory I have of my mother.
And Charlotte talked about the last text she and her mother exchanged on the day her mother died.
I had just gotten a new job, and she was asking me how my training was.
Do you remember what the last text message you got back from your mother was?
I do. I love you in all capitals.
Have they been supportive of Stephen?
Oh, incredibly supportive, unanimously supportive.
Over the last 23 months since your mother died, has your relationship with your father changed in any particular way?
I mean, it's difficult to stay as close when you can't hug your dad, but we've remained as close as possible.
The jury would have to decide if the man described as a loving father could have killed the mother of his children. Defense attorney John Sears tells the court the state has no case.
It's always the husband. If it's not him, who else is it? They jump to that conclusion.
Is there any physical evidence, DNA, blood, hair fibers, anything that matches Stephen DeMocker?
There's no DNA of Steve DeMocker anywhere in that house.
But there is DNA under Carol's fingernails that belongs to someone else, a man whose identity remains a mystery.
If he was the attacker, should have been his DNA, and it was not.
Still, Joe Butner of the Yavapai County Attorney's Office is emphatic that DeMocker was the only one who had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to kill Carol.
The evidence will show that while Mr. DeMocker was on his bike ride, his cell phone was off.
By the way, his phone is dead. Battery's dead, okay? All of a sudden, he's out of the grid. Most people say you go out of the grid. There's a reason why you're out of the grid.
Within miles of the serene beauty of the Arizona Red Rocks, Carol Kennedy's life had come to a violent end. And many in the town of Prescott believed her ex-husband Steve was her killer.
I think he took everything from her, including her life. Everything.
The autopsy concluded that Carol had suffered 7 major skull fractures from a blunt force object, possibly a golf club.
Someone did it, and I don't know who, if it wasn't you right now.
Investigators searched DeMocker's home immediately. They found a bag of golf clubs, but one was missing, a big Bertha 7 wood like this one. While authorities may have strongly suspected the missing club could be the murder weapon, they were never able to find it.
Obviously, the number one suspect is the husband. But they certainly had just cause to suspect him.
Neither the prosecutor nor the sheriff has ever been willing to speak to the news media about Carol Kennedy's murder. So we asked private investigator and CBS News consultant Joe Mora to outline the case against Stephen DeMocker.
He's got some problems with his story.
Turn left on Pumpkin Road.
One of the biggest problems, DeMocker was unreachable for 5 hours the evening Carol was murdered.
He always had a phone on and charged so that his daughters could reach him anytime, day or night.
Except that night. when, according to DeMacher, his cell phone battery had died.
That becomes a very strong point for the police and certainly puts the suspicions on Steve DeMacher. On a crime, you're looking for the motive, but you're also looking, was there time to do these things? You're looking for that window.
And DeMacher himself admits he went for a bike ride on a trail near his ex-wife's home.
Now, the situation is he lives 8 miles away from here. So why that particular day he decides he's going to drive 8 miles to go bike riding?
And like I said, the proximity of where the trail is,
I know.
where you're riding.
Wish I'd chosen a different trail.
I wish you would have chosen a different trail also.
And he came back with very visible scratches.
You got a lot of scratches. I was watching your legs. You got there, you got there.
His alibi, remember, is that he's out riding a bicycle and he gets a flat tire. So that means he's got to walk the bike back. So it's very possible he could have scratched himself in the trail. But his problem was things were happening at the wrong time, at the wrong place.
Investigators found shoe prints and bike tracks directly behind Carol Kennedy's house that they say incriminate Steve DeMacher.
There was multiple prints in that area. It was very leafy and sticks were there, but you could tell someone had been there.
An FBI expert determined that those impressions came from a specific kind of shoe, a brand called La Sportiva.
Did you find any shoes that seemed to be comparable to the impressions that you observed in these photos from the crime scene?
Yes, I found one shoe that could have made those impressions.
And a receipt showed that DeMacher had purchased a pair back in 2006. But investigators could not find them when they searched his home.
Basically, all they really have is a footprint that may or may not look similar to some shoes that he may or may not have owned.
Prosecutors tell the jury another set of impressions found near Carol's house are from tires that have a tread just like those on DeMacher's bike.
Did you find any dissimilar characteristics between those?
No, I did not.
Now, we know it's a very common tire. So 90% of the people around here probably have the same tire. But then do 90% of the people wear the same type of shoe that left that partial print?
And perhaps most damaging, after DeMacher's arrest, investigators discovered that Carol's ex-husband had conducted some rather interesting internet searches on his computer, including how to kill someone and make it look like a suicide.
That doesn't look good.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look good. His position is he was doing research to write a novel.
His sister Sharon insists it's true.
Steve's been interested in writing for a long time. He's actually a really good writer. And he's been working on a manuscript for a long time, long before the murder. I've been doing a lot of the editing for him. He's talked with a number of us about it.
But the big question remains, why? Why would Steve DeMacher kill his ex-wife?
The divorce was settled on May 27th. The murder occurred on July 2nd. They were just resolving the last little details about that divorce settlement. Everything had been decided.
Still, the prosecution was convinced the motive was money.
After the Dow dropped 18% last week,
It was 2008 and the economy was tanking, especially in the world of finance.
Steve liked to spend money. He liked his things, he liked nice hotels, he liked first class, everything.
Steve DeMacher had a mountain of expenses, and now he owed Carol $6,000 a month in alimony.
But it did become clear that he was in significant debt, what to most of us would seem insurmountable.
While his family admits that he did borrow money from them to make ends meet, they are adamant it was not a motive for murder.
He took hits, but his career was solid. He had great earning capacity, and he would have rebounded, and as did everybody else.
Still, Carol's death would be a windfall.
And was there a life insurance policy involved that he would have benefited from?
There also was a life insurance policy that he had no interest in and hasn't benefited from.
There were, in fact, 2 life insurance policies totaling $750,000, both payable to Steve DeMacher. But the defense claims not only is money not the motive, there is another suspect. This man. From the moment Steve DeMacher was charged with his ex-wife's murder, his family not only felt a profound loss.
It's like, okay, we lost Carol, now we lost Steve.
His parents also lived with the fear of having their son put to death.
I kept going over the moment, and I could picture a clock at 11:45, and 10:12, and 5:12, counting down, knowing now he's going down the corridor. Now they're putting him on a gurney. Now they're starting an IV that will pour poison into his system. And that was what I went to sleep with at night.
The death penalty was taken off the table before the trial began, but Steve DeMacher still faced life in prison. Adding to his family's pain was their belief that authorities missed a key suspect, Jim Knapp. Knapp was a friend of Carol's who was living in her guest house.
It was an ugly divorce.
Knapp was quick to arrive at the crime scene, and investigators recorded their conversation with him as he pointed a finger directly at Steve DeMacher.
My intuitive take, the guy comes off to me as a very sneaky, manipulative man.
And the first thing he said is, you know, she's got this crazy ex-husband, and I have a feeling it was probably him.
Jim Knapp might have had a reason to disparage Steve. Sharon DeMacher says there was a rumor around town that Jim Knapp wanted to be more than just friends with Carol.
What concerned us was that he was very enamored of Carol.
That's why DeMacher's defense team wants to know why investigators didn't take Knapp in for questioning or search his residence.
He wasn't looked at all that night. They never looked at his clothing. They never really inspected his truck.
Authorities had a good reason not to suspect Jim Knapp. Unlike Steve DeMacher, Knapp had an alibi.
They realized that Knapp's alibi was he was babysitting his son at his former wife's house.
But even if investigators had wanted to question Knapp again, they wouldn't get the chance. In a bizarre twist, Knapp was found dead 5 months after Carol's murder. His death was ruled a suicide.
Some people would say because Knapp committed suicide that it was a conscience of guilt in reference to his participation in being the murderer of Carol. Unfortunately, he's not alive. We can't ask him that question.
2 weeks into the prosecution's case, there is a stunning development. Steve DeMacher's trial comes to an abrupt halt when Judge Thomas B. Limburg collapses in his chambers from a brain tumor.
During the delay, DeMacher's girlfriend, Renee Girard, has a surprising change of heart and ends their 2-year relationship.
You know, I always wanted to believe that Steve had nothing to do with this. And I always felt conflicted about that, about whether he had done it or not.
Girard is having second thoughts about her boyfriend's behavior on the night of Carol's murder.
His break with routine, being out without a charged battery for his phone, being out without a flat tire kit to change his tire when he was a master of preparation for any outdoor adventure.
Thanks to new information from Renee, investigators literally unearth a crucial piece of evidence. What they say is a go bag stashed in a field outside Steve's house. Renee says he had packed it just in case he had a chance to make a run for it.
He was very constantly gripped with fear of being arrested. He was obsessed with plans to flee, saying, I'm afraid I'm going to be arrested for a crime I didn't commit.
And then came more damaging information from Renee. Remember what DeMacher's attorney told us?
Was there a life insurance policy involved that he would have benefited from?
There also was a life insurance policy that he had no interest in and hasn't benefited from.
Well, not exactly. Renee told investigators that was a lie. Even though Steve DeMacher, charged with Carol's murder, could not directly receive the $750,000, he gave instructions to his daughters to transfer all of it to his defense attorneys.
Everybody along the way said, yes, it's okay to release this money to the girls. What they didn't know, what none of the officials knew, was that the money would be used for Steve's defense.
Based on this information from Renee, authorities reviewed Steve DeMocker's jailhouse phone calls.
You need to understand.
I am understanding.
It's not unreasonable.
Sweetie, you can't hold aside anything.
They learned that older daughter Katie, in fact, had argued with her father to save some of those funds for her younger sister Charlotte's education.
If it all needs to be used for defense, it all has to go to defense. My life is in the balance, and it's more important than Charlotte's college.
But Renee's biggest revelation is about an anonymous email that would have a dramatic impact on Steve DeMocker's defense when the trial finally resumes.
He called a few days before visitation and said that he had found out some information about how Carol had been killed.
During a jailhouse visit, Steve told Renee and his daughter Charlotte that a mystery voice he could hear through a vent in his cell told him who was really involved with Carol's murder.
What had the voice told him?
People were looking for Jim Knapp because Jim Knapp was involved in some kind of a prescription drug ring, and that these people were coming to look for him either to collect money or get something, and that they had gone into the house and encountered Carol instead of Jim Knapp.
Steve wrote down the details he had heard and showed his visitors this note. DeMocker then asked if one of them would drive 100 miles south to Phoenix to send an anonymous email with the new information to both the defense and the prosecution. We interviewed Steve DeMocker in prison by phone.
Why would you involve Charlotte then? That's just really baffling from a parent's standpoint.
As a parent, in retrospect, I am appalled that I did that. But I was terrified. We were terrified. All I can say is I was in jail accused of a crime that someone else had committed. The police were bungling it.
DeMocker insists that he absolutely heard a voice in the vent telling him why Carol was killed.
Here come these accounts of Mr. Knapp's role in Carol's murder, and I don't know if they're true, but I certainly want them investigated.
Do you believe that he really heard a voice through the vent?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, I think there was enough information there. I mean, I really have it's just more of a gut feeling. There's a lot of chatter that goes on in the jails, and for lots of different reasons.
Charlotte carried out her father's wishes, but when it's revealed that Steve DeMocker was behind the not-so-anonymous email sent by his daughter, a mistrial is declared on November 12, 2010. It would take another 3 years to get this case back in front of a jury.
I don't think anybody involved in this case could have anticipated all the twists and turns that this case has taken.
"5 years and one mistrial later, Steve DeMocker remains behind bars, more than ready for his new day in court.
And he's kept a good attitude, he's kept hope.
With the new trial comes a new defense attorney, court-appointed Craig Williams.
They cannot put him in the house. And I felt good about that because I firmly believe he didn't kill her. And I felt that a reasonable jury would say, well, you can't put him in the house with this much blood?
For years, there was forensic evidence that seemed to strongly suggest there might be another suspect in the murder of Carol Kennedy. Remember that mystery DNA found under her fingernails? By the time the second trial begins, the state has finally determined it belongs to 68-year-old Ronald Berman. But how are Berman and Carol connected? Berman's autopsy was performed on the same day, on the same table as Carol's.
The DNA under Carol's fingernails belonged to the person who they did an autopsy on an hour and a half before Carol's autopsy.
Are you kidding? Did they not wipe the table down afterwards? This is a homicide investigation.
The defense claims Carol's real killer may never be found because the crime scene was so badly compromised.
There's a photograph of the deputies standing down the hall, and the dog is right there with them. They tromped through that crime scene without any care about what they were preserving. Why didn't they seal that whole thing off?
With no physical evidence to convict or exonerate Steve DeMacher,
That's what happens when you run out of money.
the prosecution points to his alleged motive: money. Emails between the former couple show they were still arguing over money, despite defense claims that the divorce had been settled.
Email on June 15th. I will not be pushed any further, Carol. You have extracted all you will extract from me. You get to start clean while I dig out of a staggering hole.
Carol's friend Jan Wheeler believes Steve was trying to solve his money problems by manipulating his ex-wife.
He would play these reeling in games with her. One of the very last conversations I had with Carol, she was just absolutely in tears. I mean, just sobbing. I was like, Carol, now what? And she said, now that the divorce is final, he has come to me last night and said, let's put this marriage back together.
And he just wouldn't go away.
Wouldn't go away.
Everyone is present. You may call your next witness.
Barb, going on.
Steve's attempts to insert himself back into Carol's life seem to be confirmed by yet another woman, his longtime business partner and lover, Barbara Onan. Onan testified that she spent the night with Steve in a Phoenix hotel room just 5 days before Carol's murder.
He was texting with Carol because Katie was flying out to Africa that day, and they were going to spend the day shopping.
That was news to you?
That was news to me. I felt as though I had been had one more time, been fooled one more time, that there they were, still back together.
It seemed like the theme of the second case was to dirty up Steve enough that jurors would believe that he could have killed her. They had to bring all of these things in that made him look like a bad guy.
He kind of was a bad guy, though.
Believe. But again, none of that. There's no violence in his history.
In the court of public opinion, people say, you know, he cheated on her an awful lot, and that speaks to their moral character. What do you have to say in response to that?
I guess all I can say is if every spouse who cheated wound up accused of murder, we'd have a problem. I regret the mistakes I made during my marriage, and it has nothing to do with any capacity for murder.
Did you ever see any violence?
No.
As she testifies at this second trial, daughter Charlotte suggests her mother was the one with the temper.
And did you ever see anybody throwing anything or doing anything like that?
I very vaguely remember my mom actually throwing something at him. I don't recall what it was. I think it was something heavy, but that was the only argument that there was ever anything physical.
DeMacher's attorneys insist that Carol's tenant, Jim Knapp, could be the killer, that he is the one with a history of intimidating women. An ex-girlfriend of Knapp's, Julie Corwin, testifies that she became afraid of Knapp after their breakup.
The last words in one of his emails was, quote unquote, "You're not getting off that easy." It just left me hanging. I felt scared. I didn't know if he was going to come up and shoot me.
The evidence is way, way, way stronger against Jim Knapp than it is against Steve DeMacher.
This is a left-handed club.
Finally, after nearly $2 million spent in taxpayers' money, the jury is about to get the case.
That's what happened to Carol. Her skull was shattered like an eggshell. This is a beating murder by someone who had everything in the world to gain by getting rid of her.
Absence of evidence is not evidence. If you cannot put him at the scene, if you cannot make sure that you have DNA, blood, hair, something to tie Mr. DeMacher to the murder of Carol Kennedy, you got no case.
I know I wasn't at her house that night, and I'm innocent.
As the jury deliberates and the hours turn into days, it is now a waiting game. Kathy Ray and Tricia Greer were on the jury.
There were questions in the jury room. A couple of the jurors wanted to talk about alternate scenarios.
They just had to be convinced that there was nobody else because the girls had already lost so much.
After 3 days, on October 4, 2013, word of a verdict has family and friends returning to court. For Carol's mom, Ruth Kennedy, justice would be seeing her former son-in-law spend the rest of his life in prison. For Steve DeMocker's family, it would be seeing him walk free.
Division 1 is in session.
Has the jury reached verdicts in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you hand the verdict forms, please?
On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty.
Guilty. Steve DeMocker is convicted in the murder of his ex-wife, Carol Kennedy.
To hear the words guilty, I simply couldn't believe it. And then my thoughts went to the girls. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just, we thought this was going to be the end of the nightmare, and it's just the beginning.
When they said guilty, Steve turned around, and for a moment, we were looking right at each other.
What did you say to him?
We'll keep fighting.
We'll keep fighting.
We'll keep fighting.
To this day, Steve DeMocker says he is baffled at how he could be accused, let alone convicted, of killing his ex-wife.
If you did not kill her, sir, then why do you think you are in jail right now?
That's the million-dollar question. It was so difficult to imagine that 12 people could look at that evidence and come up with a verdict beyond a reasonable doubt.
The pieces of evidence that started to sway me was definitely the shoe prints, because that type of shoe was very rare. His phone was turned off, was very unusual for him. The scratches concerned me.
We heard about the internet searches that he had done on how to make a homicide look like a suicide.
Nowhere in the testimony did we see anything that would convince us that he was trying to write a book.
And if pointing the finger at Jim Knapp was supposed to raise reasonable doubt with the jurors,
I didn't know if he was going to come up and shoot me.
It didn't work.
We went through Mr. Knapp's timeline carefully, and we just could not make that work. Mr. Knapp did not kill Carol Kennedy.
On January 24, 2014, Steve DeMocker is back in court for sentencing. The business suit is gone. This time, he's wearing the chains of a convicted killer.
If you want us to abandon Steve, you need to show us a drop of DNA in that house, a drop of Carol's blood anywhere on his body, his bike, his car, his home, a witness, a video, something, before we'll even begin to think that this is anything less than the conviction of an innocent man.
Steve DeMocker addresses the court for the first time and refuses to accept the jury's verdict.
I did not kill Carol. We loved each other for more than 20 years. And to believe me capable of violence against her, I would no more have harmed her than I would harm my daughters by taking her from them. I'd like to thank my family, and I'd like my daughters in particular to know how proud I am of the strength and the grace with which they have faced both the loss of their mother and the loss of their father. I love you both.
The girls' love for their father is evident when they beg the judge for mercy.
So much of what I strongly value in myself, I learned from that man. This is the same man who sits here today accused of killing my mother. Frankly, the lack of facts and the lack of evidence in this case do not permit me the luxury of drawing such conclusions. You are faced with the question of whether or not to give my father the possibility of parole in 25 years. And I ask you that you do.
I ask that you not force the permanent loss of a second loved one
but rather allow us to look forward to a time when our pain may slightly diminish and when we may heal together again.
But the prosecutor will have none of it.
This defendant is a murdering, lying thief. No matter what anybody else is going to say about him here today, he deserves the maximum sentence.
As the judge announces the sentence, he has some harsh words for DeMacher.
The thing that I can't get by is this horrific crime scene. I saw these pictures, and I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to erase those pictures from my mind. It was brutal murder, and from all appearances, the motive was money. The sentence I'm going to impose is natural life in prison.
Steve DeMacher will spend the rest of his life in prison with no chance of parole. For his two daughters, it is a double tragedy.
They've lost a lot, and they have just shown so much strength and grace through all of this, and they will do well just because of who they are.
As for me, I can promise that I will never forget the memory of my mother. She lives in me every day and will for the rest of my life. She loved people to a fault and saw the best in everyone, always. She forgave easily, sometimes too easily. The world was a better place for the life that she shared with it, and I am a better person for having been loved and cared for by her.
Come spend some time with a sweet blonde. If you're looking to get away or want to relax, give me a call. I got a call a little bit after midnight. He said, "How much is it?" I told him, $200 for the hour. He said, "Okay."
Philip Markoff is a 23-year-old Boston University medical student.
Tall, blonde, good-looking gentleman, looked nice.
He's by all accounts what we would consider a good citizen.
I just said, "Hi, how are you?" And he said, "Good." I said, "All right, come on," and motioned him to follow me into the room.
He has no criminal record. He has a fiance. He seems to be an ambitious, intelligent man who had a future ahead of him.
I shut the door, I turned around and I locked it. That's when he pulled out the gun. He's very calm, like he's done it before. My name is Trisha Leffler, and I was attacked by the Craigslist Killer.
Craigslist in the prostitution game today is the old Yellow Pages.
It's easier for aspiring predators to find prey.
Click on the site, and you've got your victim for the night.
Jalissa was 25 when she died. She was young and she was beautiful. But unfortunately, I think she went down a very troubled path. Her services are advertised as massages of a more sexual nature. Jalissa was a fighter. She wouldn't let anybody rob her or take her money. She fought back. Her killer, who police have identified as Philip Markoff, smashed her over the head with a gun and then shot her 3 times, striking her in the heart.
Boston police say the Craigslist Killer is a 22-year-old pre-med student at Boston University.
I discovered that Philip Markoff did have a secret life, a side of him that his family and friends had no idea existed.
He was participating in these sexual websites. He posted photos of his naked torso.
It revealed a whole new layer to the story. This wasn't simply a robbery gone wrong anymore.
I think Philip Markoff gave in to his demons. He completely gave in to his dark side.
Efforts to revive him were unsuccessful. Mr. Markoff died at his own hand.
The date that he committed suicide, that was one day after what would have been his 1-year wedding anniversary. It's no coincidence whatsoever, especially when you hear about what was written on his cell wall.
"7 Days of Rage, the Craigslist Killer, the final chapter. Tonight's 48 Hours Mystery."
In the spring of 2009, Boston was a city at peace. But then, on April 10th, everything changed. The Craigslist Killer began his 7-day crime spree. And his first victim was a woman from Las Vegas who was fleeing that city's crackdown on vice.
How did you end up in Boston, Massachusetts?
Just picked a city and went to it. I've been doing it for the past 2 years.
What were you doing? What was your line of work?
I was escorting.
In this case, a traveling escort. 29-year-old Tricia Leffler checked herself into the Westin Copley Hotel. No surprise, Tricia went right to where the money is. The Back Bay area is known for its fancy hotels, exclusive boutiques, and hip restaurants.
And how much money can you make in this field?
Oh, it's lucrative. A lot of money.
Thousands a week?
Oh, yeah.
She immediately went online to Craigslist, the web bulletin board, and placed an ad in the erotic services section.
What was your headline that you put in?
It was something along the lines of sweet blonde, come and relax with me.
How long before you start getting phone calls?
Right away.
Right away.
Mm-hmm.
This is so easy, isn't it?
Very easy.
What Craigslist does is basically provide services. And these prostitutes have been providing services for years. And if it's not the Yellow Pages, it's going to be Craigslist. They find a means to advertise their services.
Joe Mora, a Boston-based private investigator and 48 Hours consultant, says that by acting as her own boss, Tricia was increasing her risk.
There's a street prostitute, she's going to have a pimp down the street or across the street or on the corner is protecting her. Somebody using Craigslist, getting a fancy hotel in Boston, she's on her own.
But that April night, when Tricia saw the man who answered her ad, she felt perfectly safe.
He looked nice, he looked young, good looking, obviously.
But once the door was closed, this good-looking young man pulled out a very dangerous-looking gun.
I backed up a little bit. He just said, if you do everything you're asked, no harm's gonna come to you. And he said, lay down, put your hands behind your back. And then when he started to walk towards me, he put the gun back in his pocket.
The man put on some black leather gloves and took out some plastic zip ties like these.
He knelt down with one knee in between my legs and took my wrist and put the tie around one of them first, and then he tied the other one.
What are you thinking as he's doing that, essentially putting handcuffs on you?
I'm thinking, what does he want? I'm shaking. I'm scared. It dawned on me later that he could have very well killed me. I had about $800 in cash. He grabbed that, put that in his pocket.
As he took her credit and debit cards, he made no attempt to disguise his face, but he was intent on getting his phone number off her cell phone.
Was he wearing his gloves when he did that?
No.
How dumb is that?
Dumb.
Dumb, and as it turned out, he was more than a little weird.
He picked up a pair of my underwear that were on the floor and put them in his pocket.
What'd you think to yourself?
If he would have looked at my face, it would have been like, what the hell are you doing?
At that point, the gunman began walking around the hotel room looking for something.
And he said, come here. And I went into the bathroom and he basically tied me to the doorknob. I got really scared. He took a knife out of his pocket and cut the phone lines. He came back over to me and taped my mouth. He put 3 pieces of tape over my mouth.
Tricia noticed that he had yet to put the gloves back on, meaning that his fingerprints were all over that tape.
After he leaves, what do you do?
Within 20 to 30 seconds, I was out of my ties.
Are you worried he's on the other side of the door still?
Yes, I'm worried he's listening through the door. I look out the peephole, there's nothing, there's nobody out there. I opened the door very slowly, stuck my head out, looked both ways, nobody was in the hallway. I crept down the hall to see if he was maybe standing by the elevator. Nobody by the elevator. I'm still shaking, I'm still nervous. So I went back to the room, grabbed my room key, shut the door, and went and knocked on the next door neighbor's door, and I, can I call security? I had just been robbed at gunpoint. The next day when I went down to the police station to look through some photos, they had a surveillance photo of the man that I described.
A photo taken at the hotel?
Yes.
These stills, taken from a hotel security camera, were the first shots of the man who became known as the Craigslist Killer.
You could tell it was him?
Yes, I could tell it was him.
Wasn't he aware that there are security cameras, that people could track him down if something did go wrong?
Sometimes, because there's security cameras everywhere, it's almost like they're not there. He figured that the crime was simple. He was going to do the robbery. He was going to walk out. She's not reporting it. Nobody's going to be checking video if he was here or not. He figures it's a clean, clear-cut case. He's out of here.
Tricia remained in Boston, waiting for the police to release her cell phone when, on April 15th, they called.
And they said, we need to talk to you, it's really important. 5 minutes later, knock at the door. And then they handed me a photograph. And I said, wow, this is a really good picture of him. Where did you get it from? And they just stopped and looked at me and they were like, is that him? I said, yeah, this is him. Was this before he came up to my room? They said, no, this is taken from a different hotel. And they said he murdered another girl last night.
I've been working at the Boston Globe for 5 years. I've been doing this beat specifically for about 2 years.
Reporter Maria Kramer covers the crime and police beat. She is also a 48 Hours consultant.
You have some good contacts?
In the police department? I probably shouldn't say that. I get by.
In the spring of 2009, Maria found herself at the center of a white-hot story.
I got a call from my editor on April 15th telling me that there was a report of a woman shot at the Copley Marriott in Boston.
The dead woman was 25-year-old Julissa Brisman, an aspiring model from New York City.
I knew immediately it was going to be a big story, and as more information began coming down the pike, it was just getting bigger and bigger.
That's because the police had connected Julissa's murder to the robbery of Tricia Leffler just days before. Both women had advertised in the erotic services section of Craigslist, had been restrained with plastic ties, and, once again, stills from the Marriott showed this tall, blonde, preppy-looking man leaving the scene of the crime.
What frightened a lot of people is these pictures of a person that doesn't seem to have a care in the world.
The media labeled him the Craigslist Killer.
The case really began to take on a life of its own.
And now, all eyes were focused on the 20th floor hotel room of Julissa Brisman.
What do police believe happened in that room?
Police believe that the attacker immediately pulled a gun on her. He got at least one plastic tie on her wrist. At that point, she fought back.
48 Hours producer Paul LaRosa, along with Maria Kramer, has written a new book about the case called 7 Days of Rage. It is published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS.
Her killer shot her right at the front of her room. When he opened the door to flee, she fell outside the room.
A guest from New York City was staying in a room just down the hall from Julissa. This witness, who we'll call Jill, told LaRosa what she saw and heard.
Jill was in her room reading a mystery novel, and all of a sudden, she starts hearing like a commotion down the hall. And eventually, she poked her head out the door, and what she saw down the hall was a woman who was half in and half out of the doorway. She wasn't moving. Jill decided at that point she was going to call security. The guard bent over, started moving the hair away from the woman on the floor, and he saw a lot of blood. And once he saw the blood, the guard said, "Get in your room," he said to Jill. She stayed in the hallway and watched to see what was happening. And he immediately, started talking into his walkie-talkie. He said, "This is an emergency. We need paramedics."
Less than an hour later, Julissa Brisman, only a week away from her 26th birthday, was pronounced dead at Boston Medical Center. Later that night, cops called her mother Carmen in New York City. And Carmen called Mark Pines, a photographer who was helping Julissa in her career, and also was a family friend.
She just told me that Julissa died. You can't go back from a statement like that. It's definitive. And we just started crying. More than words, we needed to share feelings at that point. The details, I didn't care about the details at that point. My heart was so broken that all I could do was cry.
For her family and Julissa's many friends, her murder was a tragic end to a life just beginning to turn around.
What we know about Julissa before this was that she was a party girl. She was living the high life in New York. I mean, she was a young, beautiful girl in New York City, and she took full advantage of her youth and her beauty to live it up.
But at the time of her death, Julissa had stopped drinking and had radically changed her appearance. Her friend, Mark Pines, says she was happy.
She would smile with her whole face. She'd smile with her mouth and her eyebrows at the same time, and she had eyes that were like just this amazingly positive, optimistic thing in her eyes.
Action.
Pines featured Julissa in this video about cell phones.
Good, try calling me. You're not gonna reach me.
He also wrote a song about her.
Julissa,
oh, Julissa. Julissa was trying to get her modeling and acting career going, but in the meantime, there were bills to be paid. So she began to offer what's known in the trade as sensual or erotic massages.
Was Julissa a prostitute?
No, not from what I'm told. She was disgusted by it. That said, she was definitely operating in a world that could become dangerous.
With 2 victims plucked off Craigslist, one dead and one terrorized, critics blasted the site as a virtual bordello filled with all too real prostitutes.
Sex and crime were always around, even before the internet. But the internet makes it just so much easier.
The Craigslist killer knew that all too well. Just 2 days after Julissa's murder, he dipped into Craigslist yet again to find his next victim.
If you had somebody targeting women in nice hotels, in a busy part of the city, where a lot of tourists hang out, that was a huge concern for police.
In Boston, the police kept watch on the city's downtown core, determined to find the killer who was choosing his victims off Craigslist. Then, just 2 days after Julissa Brisman's murder, the Craigslist killer found a new target 60 miles from Boston at a Holiday Inn in Warwick, Rhode Island. His victim was a stripper from Las Vegas who asked that we not use her real name, so we'll refer to her as Amber.
She was dancing at a local strip club in Providence.
Amber would not do an on-camera interview, but did talk to authors Paul LaRosa and Maria Kramer.
She goes there often with her husband. She dances at the Cadillac Lounge.
During her downtime, Amber advertised on Craigslist, offering private lap dances in her hotel room.
One of these people matched the description of the man who attacked the 2 women in Boston.
For the 3rd time in 7 days, a woman willingly opened her door to this clean-cut young man.
She turns around in the room, she turns back to this guy, what happens?
The guy had a gun, and he was pointing it at her. She said he was nervous and his hand was actually shaking, the gun hand. And he said, "I'm broke, I don't want to kill you, I just need cards or money."
What does she do?
Well, she was scared. She said, "I'll give you whatever you want." He immediately tied her up with these plastic handcuffs, laid her on the ground, and started looking through her room.
Same kind of zip ties that had been used in Boston.
Exactly. At that point, her cell phone started to ring, and the gunman got very nervous when the phone kept ringing and ringing. He said, "Who's calling you? Why are they calling now?"
The caller was Amber's husband and her business manager. He was in the hotel lobby waiting for a signal from Amber that everything was okay. When he did not get it, he began calling and headed up to his wife's room.
Suddenly, there was a man coming through the door because her husband had the key to the room. The gunman pointed the gun at Amber's husband. Amber's husband took off down the hall one way. The attacker took off the other way.
The gunman escaped, although security cameras captured his image in the stairwell and lobby.
How dumb is it to show your face to these people?
What we might think is stupidity, police are more inclined to call arrogance. A person who just thinks he's smarter than everybody else and didn't expect to get caught.
But over these 7 days of rage, the Craigslist killer made several crucial mistakes. Showing his face to his victims, allowing his image to be captured by security cameras. But his biggest blunder was unwittingly handing investigators a roadmap to his front door.
One of Julissa's friends found the emails between her and her 10 p.m. appointment, the man that she met at 10 p.m. the night that she died, and then called Boston police to tell them, "I have these emails. That means I have his IP address."
An IP, or Internet Protocol address, is unique to each computer that sends email.
That was a huge break in the investigation.
Investigator Joe Mora.
That was like leaving the gun at the scene with your fingerprints on the gun. It's the same exact thing.
Detectives began tracing that virtual IP address, and it led them to a suburb just outside Boston.
That address led police to an apartment in Quincy, specifically to an apartment belonging to Philip Markoff.
Philip Markoff. For the first time, investigators could match a name to a suspect, and they were shocked to discover this 23-year-old was a second-year medical student at Boston University.
Philip Markoff is a brilliant student. We know he has an uncommon mind.
When they got Philip Markoff's name, they still weren't convinced.
Officers from Boston's elite fugitive squad began an around-the-clock stakeout.
They began their stakeout late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, waiting for somebody to come out that would look like the man in these video surveillance photos. When he did, they realized, okay, we've got somebody who looks a lot like these photos. One sergeant basically called the investigators after watching him all day and said, I like him a lot.
But before cops brought him in for questioning, the DA wanted a positive ID. They reached out to the Craigslist killer's first target, Tricia Leffler.
I got a call that morning. It was the assistant DA in Boston, and she said, we have a photo lineup for you. Are you still in Boston? I said, no, I'm in New York. I just left yesterday.
It was now 1 week after Julissa's murder, and the methodical Craigslist investigation suddenly turned frantic. Markoff, along with his fiancée, Megan McAllister, was on the move.
They come out carrying a small suitcase and an over-the-shoulder knapsack, get into the car, and start heading down Route 95 South.
The couple was heading to Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut. The race was on. Boston authorities were intent on making sure Markoff did not set foot over the state line. Once that car crosses the state line,
they're out of their jurisdiction, so they were going to have to make a quick decision.
the Boston DA rushed a New York detective over to Tricia's Manhattan hotel room with a photo array that included Markoff.
I went through them one by one. When I hit number 5, I just started shaking. And I said, this is him.
Boston police very excitedly got on the phone with the fugitive unit and said, get him.
Back on I-95, the police cars surrounded Markoff.
They pulled him over. They said, we have a warrant for this automobile. We need to take it back to Boston. You need to come with us.
The police immediately informed him that he was under arrest for kidnapping, armed robbery, and murder. When Megan was told the news of Philip's arrest, she broke down and cried. Detectives saw no reason to hold her, and she was allowed to fly to her parents' home in New Jersey, while Markoff went off to jail.
As soon as they told me they had him in custody, I just started crying. I was very, very happy. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest to know that he had finally been caught and he can't hurt anybody else.
But with Philip Markoff in custody, the questions were only just beginning. When we come back, correspondent Richard Schlesinger investigates the two sides of Philip Markoff.
I don't really believe in split personalities, yet they were two very, just incredibly different people, and they were almost living separate lives.
We will do everything we can to hold him accountable for these terrible crimes.
There were plenty of reasons for people to be shocked when Philip Markoff was arrested. He sure didn't look the part. Handsome young medical students seldom end up shackled and cuffed and facing the judge in a notorious case of homicide.
This is the sort of person you would never expect to be involved in these sorts of crimes, and he counted on that.
Because he thought, what, he was sort of hiding in plain sight? Here he was, the boy next door?
Exactly.
Casey Jordan is an attorney and a psychologist who specializes in criminal behavior.
He presented a virtual identity to society, which everyone could buy into. The guy next door, tall and blonde and handsome, a medical student engaged to a beautiful girl.
So the last thing his friends expected was this.
It was shocking. I went into shock.
Morgan Houston was Markoff's friend and study partner at the State University of New York at Albany. They were both pre-med.
He was dorky, but
So many of us are. I mean, I can be a big dork too.
He might have been a dork, but Markoff was also a star student. In fact, he finished college in just 3 years, graduated summa cum laude, and was accepted to medical school at top-ranked Boston University. By 2009, Markoff was a second-year med student and was planning a wedding to Megan McAllister, his college girlfriend. It was supposed to be a lavish sunset ceremony at this beach resort in New Jersey. Instead, Markoff ended up in jail, and Megan holed up here at her parents' house in Little Silver, New Jersey. The press pursued her, but she stayed mostly out of sight. Still, Megan, who had been dating Markoff for 3 years, came quickly to his defense after his arrest, writing reporters, "Philip is a beautiful man inside and out and would not hurt a fly."
Can you tell us how your daughter's doing?
As expected, not well.
Megan's father, Jim McAllister, spoke to reporters in front of the family home 2 days after Markoff's arrest.
Still confident in Phil, but other than that, we're saying a lot of prayers.
But police were making it more difficult for people to remain confident in Markoff. They say they found the gun that killed Jalissa Brisman in his apartment. It was like something out of a corny detective novel. The gun, similar to this one, was found hidden inside a hollowed-out book. It was, of all things, a copy of Gray's Anatomy, like this one, the basic reference book for all doctors and medical students.
They found the gun in a book, and if they show that that gun was the gun that was involved in the shooting, you got a case closed situation. See you later, he's gone.
And that wasn't all the police found. Remember Tricia Leffler's stolen underwear?
The Boston detective called me from his apartment. He said, "We did find both pairs of your underwear."
And police report finding 2 more pairs of women's underwear hidden under Markoff's mattress, though they haven't said whose. But if Markoff was keeping underwear from his victims as trophies, it was beginning to look like these were more than just simple robberies gone wrong.
It wasn't just about the money. It was, if I'm gonna get the money, how can I get it and fulfill this personal need for thrill?
Jordan thinks Markoff gets his thrills from a frightening mixture of power, sex, and control. And one night back in college, after more than a few drinks, Morgan Houston may have caught a glimpse of Philip Markoff's thrill-seeking.
Going up into the tower where I lived, he cornered me and pushed me up against the wall and was trying to kiss me. And I was saying, "No, Phil, we're just friends. What are you trying to do?" And I was trying to push him away, and he was being forceful, and I couldn't physically get him off me. And thankfully, one of my very close friends had come along, and he was able to pull him off of me, and I was able to escape upstairs.
Were you scared?
Yeah. Of course, I had no control. He wasn't listening to me when I was saying no. It wasn't the Phil I knew. I chalked it up to the alcohol.
Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was a hint of what the real Philip Markoff was like. The day after Markoff's arrest, a report surfaced that he had traded emails with a transvestite advertising on Craigslist.
It appeared that he was interested in homosexual sadomasochism, and he was interested in being the submissive partner.
Steve Huff is a crime blogger and a contributor to the True Crime Report. Following up on the email address Markoff reportedly used, sexaddict5385, Huff made a startling discovery.
I received a tip that if you added another 8 to that address, there were secondary profiles that nobody knew about yet.
And here is one of the profiles Huff found for sexaddict538885, believed to be Markoff, on alt.com, a personals website for the very adventurous. It lists these among his interests: chains, collars, leashes, and experimentation with transvestites, among others.
How certain are you that the fellow you're reading about on that website is Philip Markoff?
Oh, I'm certain.
How can you be sure?
All the evidence points to the person posting had the same birth date as Markoff. Of course, he had the similar handles, the sex addict handle.
There's also this. Boston police have confirmed the torso shot seen here was found on Markoff's laptop. These secret profiles and his alleged solicitation of a transvestite suggest to psychologist Casey Jordan that Markoff's public persona was at war with his deeper desires.
He really did have this other double life. Now that in and of itself doesn't cause people to rob or to kill, but what it does is very often cause what we call in criminology a fractured identity. That conflict can actually result in violence.
Police say in February, Markoff used a fake ID to buy a gun in New Hampshire, the same gun police report finding in his apartment.
He had the gun, he was willing to use it, and he wasn't afraid of killing at this point.
In fact, as the final chapter unfolds, Markoff shows everyone just how violent he could be.
With Philip Markoff behind bars,
there is a possibility that Philip Markoff has done this before.
District Attorney Dan Conley made a public plea to other possible victims.
If you have been a victim, like these victims have been, please come forward.
And for the first time since Markoff's arrest,
just a short time ago, Philip Markoff's parents left.
His father, Dr. Richard Markoff, and his mother, Susan Haynes, visited him in jail.
Do you still believe in your son's innocence?
Markoff's older brother also visited him.
His brother John and his wife Deanna.
And soon after, reports began to circulate that a distraught Markoff told his brother to forget about it and move to California because even more damning information would be revealed. It was yet another shock for Markoff's family, who live in upstate New York.
His mother worked at a casino. His father was a dentist. And by all accounts, he had a normal, happy upbringing.
But by last summer, those happy days were done. A Boston grand jury indicted Markoff on first-degree murder for killing Julissa Brisman and the kidnapping and armed robbery of Tricia Leffler. Markoff was required to appear in court to answer those charges, and for the first time since the case catapulted into the headlines, the public would get a chance to hear the man at the center of this media hurricane.
How do you plead to this indictment, sir? Not guilty.
Not guilty. Markoff sounded confident in his innocence, but he and his lawyer are in a distinct minority.
The police have incredibly strong evidence against Philip Markoff.
The damning security camera stills, Tricia's eyewitness identification, Markoff's fingerprints allegedly found on the duct tape used on Tricia, and
most devastating, the 9mm gun and the hollowed out copy of Grey's Anatomy.
Has a ballistics test been run on that weapon?
Yes, a ballistics test has been run on the weapon and has shown that there is a match between the gun and the bullets that killed Julissa Brisman.
But what about Markoff's fiancée, Megan McAllister, who lived with him inside that Quincy apartment?
Is there any evidence that Megan knew anything of Philip's secret life?
None.
She knew nothing about his bizarre sex life?
No, she didn't know any of this.
Megan, do you have a comment? I know this must be a real hard time for you right now, Megan.
Megan visited Markoff twice in jail and told him face-to-face that the wedding was off.
Megan, will you ever see him again? Do you think you'll ever see him again?
That question was answered this past week in a shocking development.
The so-called Craigslist killer commits suicide in jail.
The initial reports were that Philip Markoff had killed himself in his own cell.
at the Nash West Street Jail where he was being held and where he was awaiting trial. He had put a plastic bag over his head in an apparent attempt to asphyxiate himself, and he had also cut some major artery.
It was left to DA Conley to lay out precisely how Markoff committed suicide.
Using a primitive scalpel fashioned from a pen and a sharp piece of metal, he inflicted a series of small puncture wounds and incisions on his body, including his neck, arms, wrist, and ankles. He hit several veins and the carotid artery in his neck. All of these wounds are consistent with suicide.
These photos, taken inside Markoff's cell, show that handmade scalpel and the plastic bag he put over his head. How these photos were leaked to a local Boston television station is under investigation, as is Markoff's suicide. Markoff had tried to kill himself at least once before, hours after his arrest. But a psychiatrist later took him off suicide watch.
The way that he did this really almost virtually guaranteed that he would die before anybody could find him. It seems as though he took great pains to make sure he wouldn't be found alive.
If there was a suicide note, it has not been revealed. However, before he died, Markoff, a known gambler, played one last card.
In a small space above the door, he had written 2 words in what appeared to be his blood. And the first word was Megan, and underneath it, the word pocket.
In this photo, it's difficult to make out the words, but it's clear that Markoff never got over Megan. Almost to the day, 1 year ago, they were to have wed on this beach. And even as he was living out his final moments, he thought of her. The word pocket reportedly refers to a pet name the two had for each other. And there were several photos of Megan adorning Markoff's cell wall.
We don't know what kind of person he is emotionally, and I think that forensic psychologists could have a fascinating time trying to analyze the significance of that day.
The day after Markoff's suicide, Philip's brother John posted a message on Facebook. "Rest in peace, Phil. I will always love you." Those familiar with the case believe Markoff was trying to spare his fiancée, who most likely would have been called to testify, the agony of a trial, a fact that does not sit well with the district attorney.
With Philip Markoff's final actions, the Brisman family has been deprived of an opportunity to hear a verdict rendered, to see justice pronounced, and even the chance to tell the court and Mr. Markoff face to face what Julissa meant to them and the immeasurable pain and loss he inflicted upon them. I ask you all again to keep Julissa Brisman and her family and her friends in your thoughts and prayers.
Julissa's mother, Carmen, is heartbroken and cannot bear to speak publicly about her dead daughter or Markoff's suicide.
Maybe they would have had some sort of understanding of why their daughter had to die, and that's been taken away from them. So that's where the disappointment comes from.
All she has left are her memories and Julissa's dog, Coco, who many said was her best friend.
I think that that's one of the most tragic things, is that he went after somebody so vulnerable. Somebody like Julissa Brisman is easily forgotten, but she was a real person who meant a lot to quite a few people.
It was early evening of August 31st, 2012, when Yancey Knoll left work and headed home. He started driving his battered old Subaru up Interstate 5. At some point, he encountered a man in a BMW. He had no way of knowing that he was going to be dead in 10 minutes.
Yancey Knoll was just a guy who lived in North Seattle, had a girlfriend and a dog, liked to climb mountains. He was one of us.
When you prosecute murder cases for as long as we have, the random nature of death is what gets in your head.
He was my best friend for 22 years. He was my touchstone. He was the guy who kept me grounded.
People adored him. The last few moments of Yancey Knoll's life were pulling up at a stoplight. The BMW pulled up next to Yancey's Subaru. Yancey turned and saw this car and this man next to him. He saw the gun pointed at his head, and he saw the bullet that shattered the window and tore apart his face. And then he turned and was shot 3 more times in the head.
The witnesses really didn't know what had happened. They heard the shots, and then they saw the BMW pull into oncoming traffic, screeched out, leaving tire marks, going so fast that when the car hit a hill, it took air and then sped out of sight.
When I arrived that day at the murder scene, it was dusk. They had yellow crime scene tape around Yancey Knoll's Subaru. There was blood outside the driver's door. The driver's seat was saturated with blood.
When police respond to a murder, they're looking for a reason. Was anybody mad at Yancey? Did Yancey have any enemies?
There might have been some kind of road incident, some kind of traffic incident.
Now, what are people thinking? That there's a killer on the loose?
There was a killer on the loose. Anybody could have been the next target.
Police didn't know they were looking for a student of murder. Someone who would kill just to kill.
I'm Peter Van Sant. Tonight on 48 Hours, Student of Murder.
This case is about the presence of evil in our world.
It was like a bomb had dropped.
None of us is ever safe. Any of us could have been Yancey Knoll.
Prosecutors Adrian McCoy and Kristen Richardson say the murder of Yancey Knoll in 2012, shot to death in his car while stopped at a red light, put the city of Seattle on edge.
The police went all out. They took it very seriously.
Police are still looking for the suspect.
Yancey Knoll was shot and killed 1 week ago tonight.
Right now, the shooter is on the loose.
How big a story was this?
This was a very big story.
Allison Grandy is a reporter for Cairo 7, a CBS News affiliate.
We have shootings in Seattle. We don't necessarily have many shootings in that area of Seattle, that time of day, and that type of victim.
What were you hearing? Did Yancey Knoll have any enemies?
From talking to his friends, Yancey didn't have any enemies. He was an outdoorsy guy who enjoyed fine wine, loved what he did, working as a wine steward at QFC.
Hey, what's your name? Yancey.
Bottom line, 42-year-old Yancey Knoll
We're jumping, right? Yep, we're jumping.
was a good-hearted, happy-go-lucky guy.
Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah!
And, friends say, the idea that Yancey exploded into a road rage battle is ridiculous.
He drove like a grandma. He was very, very careful.
Longtime friend Brad Kenny.
He had a Subaru wagon, not known for its speed.
Was he an angry man?
No.
Was he impulsive?
No.
Reckless?
Never.
Verbally abusive?
God, no. Not even close. He was so careful and mindful with how he interacted with people.
Investigators suspect Yancey and his killer crossed paths around 7 p.m. on Interstate 5, just north of Seattle.
It's possible that there was some sort of confrontation, and Yancey pulled up to the intersection thinking nothing of it.
You think he ever knew what hit him?
Never. He was killed instantly, thank God. He had no idea what happened.
The details of this shooting were curious, to say the least. Right here, 5 shots were fired with remarkable accuracy. It was at about this time of day, and the shooter killed Yancey Knoll just a few feet from other motorists.
I hear 5 rapid shots, kind of like a pop, 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 pop.
Friends Kevin Watts and Angelo Rama were driving together when they heard those 5 pops behind them. The next thing they saw was a car speed away into oncoming traffic.
I drove by and I was like, that's kind of weird that someone wouldn't wait for a red light.
Upset that the driver had run the red light, the 2 friends hit the gas and gave chase.
We couldn't catch up to him.
How fast did that vehicle peel out of here?
0 to 60 in like 2-3 seconds. He was gone.
Rama and Watts gave up the chase and returned to the scene where a Subaru was still at the curb with its motor running. The friends had a sinking feeling that those pops they'd heard likely were gunshots.
I saw a lot of blood. I saw where the bullet holes were, and I realized that there's absolutely nothing I could do.
The shooter's bullets had hit Yancey 4 times in the head. The case was about to consume detectives Frank Clark and Dana Duffy for the next 2 years.
Yancey had no criminal history, no history of being a hothead. We really didn't have a lot to go on.
After closely inspecting the crime scene, the detectives realized Yancey's window was down, and the shooter had fired those 5 shots right through his own passenger side window.
That's so strange to me. The shooter would shoot through the passenger side window of his car at someone else. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No, it was strange to us as well. That was a huge piece of evidence.
The police now knew the shooter's car had a broken passenger side window, and there was more. Even though witness Angelo Rama had only glimpsed the fleeing car for a split second, something registered.
My first guess was an M4. It's a BMW car. The one that I saw was a convertible. It was silver.
Was the top up or down?
It was down. And when he was driving by, I noticed it had really, really nice silver rims.
Armed with his detailed description, the police advised the public to be on the lookout for that BMW model with that broken passenger side window. As for the driver,
I looked at the person who was driving the car because I'm really good with faces.
Kevin Watts helped a police artist come up with this remarkably detailed sketch of the shooter. Within a week, the sketch was released to the public, along with grainy still photos of the car from a nearby security camera.
We knew that police in Seattle were looking for a silver BMW, and they were pulling them over.
All over the city?
Yes, yes.
Police were desperate to stop the killer from striking again, not knowing if or when he would. 2 weeks went by, and then a suspect surfaced who surprised everyone.
When you see something like this from somebody who has it all together, he's not crazy. He's just evil.
Police are still looking for the suspect. He was driving a silver BMW.
In his 20s or 30s.
Did witnesses say?
Flee for anyone with information.
In the 2 weeks that followed Yancey Knowles' brutal execution, cops received hundreds of tips about that dark-haired suspect in a silver sports car.
It seemed at that time like everybody in the city of Seattle was driving a BMW Z4 or a Z3.
Then, on September 14th,
a woman calls in an anonymous tip.
For the first time, this mysterious man has a name.
And she provides a name of Din Bowman and his address, which is less than 10 blocks from the shooting site. When we pulled up a photo of him, matched the description of our sketch.
Did his hairstyle match?
Yes, and the age description matched.
And yet, the 29-year-old Din Bowman appears to be the most unlikely of potential suspects. He's a dazzling engineer with an inventive imagination.
The golf ball hits the lever of this press, which drives the drill, which spins the wire.
Like this Rube Goldberg contraption he created just for fun.
It swings over and hits this water bottle. The bottom of the water bottle is a magnetic plunger.
The people that we've spoken to have described him as brilliant.
A genius?
Others have titled him as a genius.
Which then triggers this flamethrower.
Bowman was only a 12-year-old when he entered college. In his 20s, Bowman opened his own business, a boutique engineering company called Vague Industries that specialized in robotics. And then, in 2007, Bowman met Jennifer Palm, a successful dentist at an education seminar. They were married a year later.
I thought they were what I considered to be a power couple. Very, very sophisticated.
Jess and Matta was a friend of the Bowmans.
What were they like as a couple?
Loving. The both of them, I think, understood one another.
But it was up to detectives Duffy and Clark to figure out Din Bowman, and they quickly learned that he had owned a BMW.
We wanted to know, does he still have that BMW? Is it still at his house? And immediately we came up with the plan that we're going to set up a surveillance on his residence.
A stakeout.
A stakeout.
A tense week went by with no sign of the BMW coming or going. But then the garage door opens up just enough for the detectives to spot a silver sports car.
Based on that information, we're able to obtain a search warrant.
Before dawn, on September 21st, 2012, as Din and Jennifer were leaving for work, police swooped in to arrest Din Bowman.
Din was placed in handcuffs and transported down to our office.
So you know, this is a police facility, and everything's being recorded, okay? Just to let you know that.
Bowman has to wait 2 hours for detectives to arrive to question him. While he's killing time, Bowman doesn't appear to be concerned. He enjoys some snacks and a cup of coffee. Exasperated, Bowman complains his precious time is being wasted.
Were you knocking?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, kind of getting a little annoyed at how long this is taking. Do I need to, like, sorry, it has to take as long as it takes, okay?
He was pretty confused about the whole thing. It was kind of weird.
Bowman also didn't realize that in another room, his wife, Jennifer, had agreed to answer questions from detectives Clark and Duffy.
Have you heard of any murders, like, within a few blocks of your house in the last few weeks?
I'm not sure. You're not sure? It's a yes or no question. I'm not sure.
We call it the I'm not sure interview.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Because her responses were overwhelmingly, I'm not sure.
So your honesty right now is paramount. I understand. I'm not sure what I can tell you.
Jennifer didn't know that the detectives had already inspected Din's BMW and had discovered from these markings that the passenger side window had been replaced. Remember, investigators were certain the killer had fired through that glass.
The first thing we did was open the passenger door, and you could see glass shards in the well of the door jamb. Also, within the garage, there was this fresh smell of paint.
That's because the BMW's silver rims had been painted black.
What about the paint smell that we're smelling in there?
I'm not sure.
Do you know anything that goes on in your house?
For nearly 4 hours,
he bled all over the frickin' streets of Seattle, okay?
Investigators hammered Jennifer for answers.
And I'm tired of you sitting there playing dumb.
While the interview was going on, investigators entered the Bowman's house, which was surprisingly bare.
We knew that Jennifer was the primary breadwinner in that household, and we knew from serving some of our search warrants that she made probably $250,000 a year. But when we got into the home, she had hardly any bedroom furniture. Her mattress laid on the floor.
As they went room to room, investigators discovered a small arsenal of weapons and ammunition. Everything except the suspected murder weapon, a 9mm Glock. When detectives finally got to Bowman, they hoped he would answer a few questions. But Bowman was smart enough to shut down the interview.
Do you want to talk to a lawyer, or you want to talk to us first?
Well, I guess I'd like to talk to a lawyer.
Bowman might have been done with the detectives, but they were far from finished with him.
You're going to be charged with a crime.
Of what?
Murder.
Of what? Of who?
Murder of a human being.
Okay.
It was something to see. At least 45 friends of murder victim Yancey Knoll packed arraignment court this morning to get a look at this man.
You watch this man walk in and you see this unassuming person and you go, why? Why would you do this?
Din Bowman has been in custody for 4 months for the murder of Yancey Knoll. And at this hearing, Bowman learns his bail is set at a stunning $10 million, a sum he cannot make.
He hasn't shown any sign of guilt or even fear.
Brad Kenny is desperate for answers.
It just fills you with so much anger.
While Bowman appears stoic in court, prosecutors say the alleged killer has a quirky side that emerges in hundreds of recorded jailhouse phone calls with his wife, Jennifer.
They had pet names. Din was Bunny, and Mrs. Bowman, Jennifer, was Snuggles.
Bunny and Snuggles.
Bunny and Snuggles.
When they talk to each other, they talk in baby talk.
Bunny, how are you? I'm doing good. How's my little snuggle cake? I just wrote you an email. Yay.
It was very strange. Very strange.
I miss so many things right now. I know. I don't have a Snuggles. You don't have a snuggle plum next to you.
Everyone warned us, don't listen to the jail calls. Don't listen to the jail calls. You'll want to throw up.
I'm just going to say love, 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 love. Love, 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 love.
Meanwhile, back among the grown-ups, detectives Frank Clark and Dana Duffy were methodically building their homicide case against Bowman. They discovered that for years, the tech-savvy genius had been downloading these books, articles, and videos to his computer on the subject of death and murder.
It's not that he just had a little bit of it, he had tons of it.
And then there was Bowman's obsession with this man.
Bond. James Bond.
And it showed in Bowman's computer videos. That's Din Bowman driving a car at high speeds around an obstacle course. And here he is blasting away in shooting demonstrations where he proved he was an expert marksman with either hand.
I don't believe that Din Bowman got up that morning thinking, today's the day. that I'm going to shoot somebody. This situation presented itself somehow. But once it did, then all his self-training and research kicked in.
We're going to talk about shooting through glass.
And one of Bowman's videos, made by a firearms expert, really shocked police.
I've come into a situation where I feel threatened by somebody off to my passenger side.
It was a play-by-play of Yancey's murder.
Of course, I recognize, I come down, I grip, I cross parallel, extend, touch, press.
If you want to know how to shoot somebody in traffic from your very fancy sports car, it was an awfully helpful video. He didn't even have to roll down his window.
Prosecutors came to believe Bowman wanted to kill someone just for the thrill of it.
Why would he commit this murder in broad daylight where there are witnesses around who could see his car, perhaps see him?
What's the fun of it if there's no challenge, if there's no witnesses, if there's no need to get away, to speed off and fly through neighborhood streets and hide your car in your garage? That was the fun for him.
Soon after the murder, police say that Bowman went to his computer where he had his vast library of murder-related books, including Arrest Proof Yourself.
How to cover up a murder, how to get rid of a gun, how to get rid of gunshot residue.
And police say Bowman now had an accomplice, Jennifer Bowman, AKA Snuggles.
Do you understand how serious this is right now, Jennifer?
Jennifer, to me, seemed very, very nervous.
Tell us the truth.
Poor eye contact. I could see that she was shaky.
Tell me the truth right now.
I have told you the truth.
Jennifer never asked for a lawyer and handed over her purse, where police found receipts that aided the investigation.
Do either of you have the belief that Jennifer had prior knowledge of this attack?
I don't think she had prior knowledge, but I believe that at some point Din told her what happened. She had to know something because the next day she went to Portland with him.
Why'd you go to Portland?
It was just a little day trip, a little road trip.
A trip that led to this auto glass shop where police say Bowman began to cover up his crime, his wife by his side.
She was very standoffish. She didn't say much.
Repairman Jeff Shields.
He just seemed like he needed a window right away.
Bowman told Shields the BMW window had been shattered by a thief while he and Jennifer were eating in Portland.
What time of day was the window broken?
We found it in the afternoon.
At approximately what time?
It was right after we ate lunch.
But detectives say a restaurant receipt from Jennifer's purse told a different story.
They were never there for lunch. They went there at dinner time.
3 weeks later, the Bowmans visited a tire store in northern Seattle. Manager Doug Haskett says Bowman used the name Peter while his wife avoided eye contact.
She was a blonde, and she just kind of looked at the ground. She really wouldn't talk to anybody.
Bowman bought 4 cheaper tires to replace the expensive BMW tires.
How would he get new tires?
Because during our investigation, the media released that there were tire tread tracks left at the scene.
Why did he get new tires?
I'm not sure.
Were the other ones wore out?
I'm not sure.
What if we put you on a polygraph test today?
You'd feel it like a sack of potatoes. I mean, I can tell you're lying just looking at you.
Police say they later found the set of expensive, practically new BMW tires inside Bowman's workshop at Vague Industries. The murder weapon was never recovered, but prosecutors felt they had enough evidence to try Din Bowman for first-degree murder.
Please rise.
And he would soon take the stand and tell a story he had long kept secret.
If I didn't do something right then, I was going to die.
Frank, what do we have here?
Peter, we're in the evidence warehouse of the Seattle Police Department.
2 vehicles, side by side, once again. just as they were on that summer evening in August 2012.
This is Din Bowman's BMW Roadster Z4 and Yancey Knowles' Subaru.
What brought them together is unclear. The result of their encounter is not.
What goes through your mind when you look inside this car?
Sadness, devastation for Yancey.
His family lost a loving member. Murder is very ugly. It's never pretty.
And now, on November 19th, 2014, 2 years after Yancey Knoll was savagely gunned down, his alleged killer enters the courtroom to face the charge of first-degree murder.
Please rise. Court is now in session.
By the time of trial, he looked like he was 13.
Din Bowman is transformed. Gone is the confident, cocky young man who first met with detectives.
Do you want to talk to a lawyer or you want to talk to us first?
No, I guess I'd like to talk to a lawyer.
And in his place is what appears to be a clean-cut college student.
This guy doesn't look like a killer, and that's not at all uncommon for defendants to change their appearance in order to appeal to the jury.
Bowman's mother, a native of Vietnam, and his father, a Boeing engineer, are in court every day to support their only child. But his cooing wife, Jennifer, his snuggles, is nowhere to be seen.
We are ready to begin opening statements.
Prosecutor Adrian McCoy tells jurors that the motive for murder wasn't greed or jealousy.
This was a fulfillment of a quest.
But something far more macabre.
A quest to know what it would be like to kill someone.
McCoy attempts to take the jury inside Bowman's mind by showing these training videos recovered from his computer.
We're going to talk about shooting through glass.
From video to thousands of pages of research on killing another person, prosecutors paint a portrait of a premeditated murder.
It was the equivalent of the Library of Congress on death.
You ever seen anything like this before in your career?
Not even close.
Why was all that stuff on his computer?
He hoarded information. He had a lot of things on his computer that are totally bizarre. Having possession of it doesn't mean anything. Mr. Bowman was actually trying to create a library of basically everything.
Bowman's lawyer, prominent defense attorney John Henry Brown, whose former clients include serial killer Ted Bundy, says there's no evidence that Bowman ever read or watched any of these materials.
There were thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pages about engineering techniques, but also there was all this bizarre stuff that the prosecutors used in order to make up their motive.
As the defense presents its case, Brown takes a big gamble.
You swear or affirm under penalty of perjury.
He puts Din Bowman on the stand.
I felt like it was just this crazy bad dream, and I was running from a monster.
And Brown knows he's risking it all on Bowman's ability to sway jurors and convince them that he was the victim of road rage.
If I didn't do something right then, I was going to die.
Bowman explains that it all began when he accidentally cut off Yancey Knoll on the interstate.
There was sort of a stream of swearing. I think the phrase that caught my attention was, you better learn how to drive that fancy car, boy, or you're gonna get yourself up.
Bowman says Yancey closely followed him off the interstate to this traffic light, where they both stopped.
And it was that point when I got wham! Yeah.
That wham, Bowman says, was a wine bottle thrown by Yancey that hit him in the head.
He's an absolute liar. That's sacrilegious to Yancey. He would never throw and waste wine on somebody like that.
I remember seeing his eyes really like bulging, and Like as he was yelling, I would describe it as just like violent hatred that you would, I had only seen in the movies.
Did you think it was possible he had a gun?
Yeah. I was scared.
Fearing for his life, Bowman says he pulled out his 9mm Glock, pointed it at Yancey, and fired.
You intentionally shot him?
Yes.
Was it your intent to kill him?
No.
Road rage is by definition not premeditation.
And Bowman says he shot Yancey Knoll in self-defense.
I remember opening my eyes, seeing that I had the gun in my hand, and I just dropped the gun and stepped on the gas.
Though Bowman claims he was the victim, he didn't call the police. Panicked, Bowman says he collected evidence from his car, including the wine bottle and the gun, and threw it all away.
Throwing away of the evidence that would support his own story. This is a guy who's genius-level IQ, right?
Well, but a lot of geniuses I know don't have a lot of common sense.
You threw away the evidence that you could show the police to prove you were not a criminal, right?
I didn't think they would even believe me.
But prosecutor Kristen Richardson isn't buying a word of Bowman's story.
So you don't think that most husbands would go home to their wives and say, oh my God, I almost got killed.
I figured the more that he talked, the worse it was going to get for him.
You're an expert shooter. What was your target?
There was no aiming involved in this.
Okay, well, you did a pretty good job, didn't you? Because you hit him 4 times in the head, including the temple, right?
That surprised me.
For 3 days, Richardson hammers away at Bowman.
You lied to your parents, you lied to your wife, right?
Is that a question?
But he never loses his composure.
Mr. Bowman, you have no trouble answering yes or no to Mr. Brown. Is there something wrong with the way I ask questions of you?
No. It seemed like a strange question.
Okay, well, that's the first no I think I've gotten from you, so I guess the point's been made. I have nothing else. Thank you.
You may step down, sir. Thank you.
As Din Bowman steps down, the question is, did he convince the jury that he killed Yancey Knoll to save his life?
I think Jim deeply believed the jury would see that. Self-defense is justifiable homicide.
Or simply for the thrill.
Is he guilty of murder in the first degree? Yes.
I will never forget Yancey.
Every time he hikes this trail, Brad Kenny thinks of his friend Yancey Knoll.
I really miss him. It's never going to be over, and I'll always miss him. I mean, it's good to be here, but it's really difficult.
Please rise.
After 3 weeks and 31 witnesses, Din Bowman's murder trial is coming to a close.
He hasn't shown one iota of remorse. He's just completely stoic.
I think we're ready for the jurors.
On December 9th, 2014, more than 2 years after Yancey Knoll's murder, and coincidentally, Din Bowman's 32nd birthday, jurors begin deliberations.
It's the worst part of the job, waiting for a verdict. But it's just the nature of it. You always doubt yourself.
One person not doubting himself is Din Bowman, as he confides to his wife Jennifer in recorded jailhouse phone calls.
We should chastise the jurors if they take longer than tomorrow.
Jennifer has not appeared a single day of Bowman's trial, but she stays in constant contact and has no doubt whatsoever of his innocence.
This is obvious. They need to acquit. Like, how could they consider anything else?
You'd have to be completely irrational to believe anything else.
Be seated, please.
On day 3, the jury returns.
I understand the jury has reached a verdict. I will read the verdict form. We, the jury, find the defendant, Thomas bin Bowman, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree as charged.
Guilty.
The jury didn't buy Din Bowman's claim.
He admits he killed Noel, but says it was
First-degree murder required premeditation.
It's a total surprise to Bowman, but sweet relief to Yancey's girlfriend and his supporters.
The verdict is read. What was that moment like for Din?
Well, he was so emotionally upset. He said, I can't believe it, I can't believe it, I can't believe it.
3 weeks later, a very different-looking Din Bowman is back in court for sentencing.
Mr. Bowman made some bad decisions.
The once cocky boy genius is gone as the reality of the guilty verdict sinks in, and his parents step forward to beg the judge for mercy.
I know this is my fault.
Defense attorney Brown must finish reading her statement.
Our son's acts are our faults. My husband and I, we provide and allowed him to learn a gun for self-protection.
Brown, a seasoned trial lawyer, can't help but show emotion as Din's mother asks the judge to send her to prison in place of her only child.
I please ask you to allow myself to substitute any punishment by placing myself in Din's role.
It was heartbreaking to watch his mother at sentencing, for her to offer herself in his place, to do his punishment for him. That's real.
Moments later, it's Bowman's turn.
Din, are you able to speak?
But Yancey's girlfriend and his supporters refuse to listen.
I'm disappointed that the jurors didn't believe me.
And the first words out of Din's mouth when he's asked to make a statement at sentencing is not about his parents or his heartbroken mother or Yancey's friends or family. It's, I can't believe the jury didn't believe me. That's his focus.
I don't envy your task of having to make the burden of deciding my fate. And I'm sorry for placing you in that situation. And all I can ask is for your mercy and for your help.
As the judge is about to deliver Bowman's sentence, he has something he feels compelled to say.
I feel very sorry for your parents, Mr. Bowman, and I want to tell them that it is not their fault. Mr. Bowman is responsible for his own actions.
Bowman gets 29 years and 1 month, slightly less than the maximum. The case against Din Bowman is over, but the police feel there's unfinished business.
Was Jennifer misleading or dishonest or lying at any point during this questioning?
Yes, she was.
I would very much like her to be charged with a crime.
The crime of helping her husband cover up Yancey's murder.
Frank, would you like her to be charged with a crime?
Yes, I would.
Jennifer today has changed her name and her job.
She opened the door.
But we tracked her down in Seattle.
Hey, Jennifer. Peter Van Sant, 48 Hours. Why did you lie to detectives? Why did you help your husband cover up a murder? You can talk to us. No answers still.
Ultimately, the state attorney chose not to bring charges against Jennifer, and she in turn has cut off all ties with the man she once endearingly called her bunny. Today, the house the couple lived in sits empty. The 2 cars at the heart of this case remain in a police warehouse. But the memories of Yancey Knoll remain as alive as ever.
Ready? 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 Get it!